A strategic bomber is a medium to long-range penetration bomber aircraft designed to drop large amounts of air-to-ground weaponry onto a distant target for the purposes of debilitating the enemy's capacity to wage war. Unlike tactical bombers, penetrators, fighter bombers, and attack aircraft, which are used in air interdiction operations to attack enemy combatants and military equipment, strategic bombers are designed to fly into enemy territory to destroy strategic targets. In addition to strategic bombing, strategic bombers can be used for tactical missions. There are currently only 3 countries that operate strategic bombers: the United States, Russia and China. The modern strategic bomber role appeared after strategic bombing was widely employed, and atomic bombs were first used in combat during World War II. Nuclear strike missions can potentially be carried out by most modern fighter bombers and strike fighters, even at intercontinental range, with the use of aerial refueling. So any nation possessing this combination of equipment and techniques theoretically has such capability. Primary delivery aircraft for a modern strategic bombing mission need not always necessarily be a heavy bomber type, and any modern aircraft capable of nuclear strikes at long range is equally able to carry out tactical missions with conventional weapons. An example is France's Mirage IV, a small strategic bomber replaced in service by the ASMP-equipped Mirage 2000N fighter bomber and Rafale multirole fighter. The first strategic bombing efforts took place during World War I, by the Russians with their Sikorsky Ilya Muromets bomber, and by the Germans using Zeppelins or long-range multi-engine Gotha aircraft. Zeppelins reached England on bombing raids by 1915, forcing the British to create extensive defense systems including some of the first anti-aircraft guns, which were often used with searchlights to highlight the enemy machines overhead. Late in the war, American flyers under the command of Brig. Gen. Billy Mitchell were developing multi-aircraft, masked bombing missions behind German lines. Although the armistice ended full realization of what was being planned, study of strategic bombing continued in the interwar years. Many books and articles predicted a fearful prospect for any future war, paced by political fears such as those expressed by British Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, who told the House of Commons early in the 1930s that the bomber will always get through, no matter what defensive systems were undertaken. It was widely believed by the late 1930s that strategic terror bombing of cities in any war would quickly result in devastating losses and might decide a conflict in a matter of days or weeks. But theory far exceeded what most air forces could actually put into the air. Germany focused on short-range tactical bombers. Britain's Royal Air Force began developing 4-engine long-range bombers only in the late 1930s. The U.S. Army Air Corps was severely limited by small budgets in the late 1930s, and only barely saved the B-17 bomber that would soon be vital. The equally important B-24 first flew in 1939. Both aircraft would constitute the bulk of the American bomber force that made the Allied daylight bombing of Nazi Germany possible in 1943-45. At the start of World War II, so-called strategic bombing was initially carried out by medium bomber aircraft, which were typically twin-engined, armed with several defensive guns, but only possessed limited bomb-carrying capacity and range. Both Britain and the US were developing larger 2- and 4-engine designs, which began to replace or supplement the smaller aircraft by 1941-42. After American entry into the war, late in 1941, the US 8th Air Force began to develop a daylight bombing capacity using improved B-17 and B-24 4-engine aircraft, in order to assemble the formations to carry out these bombing campaigns. Assembly ships were used to quickly form defensive combat boxes. The RAF concentrated its efforts on night bombing, but neither force was able to develop adequate bomb sights or tactics to allow for often bragged pinpoint accuracy. The post-war U.S. strategic bombing survey studies supported the overall notion of strategic bombing, but underlined many of its shortcomings as well. Attempts to create pioneering examples of smart bombs resulted in the Azon Ordnance, Deployed in the European theatre and CBI theatre from B-24s. Following the untimely death of the top German advocate for strategic bombing, General Walter Wever in early June 1936, the focus of Nazi Germany's Luftwaffe bomber forces, the so-named Kampfgeschwader became the battlefield support of the German army as part of the general blitzkrieg form of warfare, carried out with both medium bombers such as the Heinkel He-111 and Chanel bombers such as the Junkers Ju-88A. General Weaver's support of the Ural bomber project before WWII's start dwindled after his passing, with